Before the Oscars, before Fight Club, before the magazine covers and the private jets and the name that became synonymous with Hollywood itself, before any of it, Brad Pitt was standing on a street corner in Los Angeles wearing a giant chicken costume, waving at cars that didn't slow down, handing flyers to strangers who didn't stop walking. Not a costume party, not a dare, not a joke between friends. This was his job. This was how one of the future biggest movie stars in the world was paying his rent. Why was he there? How desperate did things get before Hollywood finally noticed him? And how close did he come to walking away from it all and going back to the ordinary life he had left behind? You're watching Fame Files. Subscribe now for more untold Hollywood stories. To understand how Brad Pitt ended up inside a chicken suit on a Los Angeles sidewalk, you have to go back to where he started, Springfield, Missouri, a quiet, mid-sized city in the Ozarks where the values were conservative and the expectations were clear. You went to school, you studied something practical, you built a stable life. Brad's father managed a trucking company. His mother worked in education. It was a household that believed in reliability, in doing what made sense, in not taking unnecessary risks with your future. Brad enrolled at the University of Missouri to study journalism. By all appearances, he was on exactly the path his upbringing had prepared him for. He had friends, he was social and well-liked. He was, by every reasonable measure, going to be just fine. He was weeks away from graduating. Not months, weeks. The finish line was right there, close enough to touch. He left anyway. Something had been building in him for a while, a feeling that the life waiting for him on the other side of that diploma was not actually his life, that the version of Brad Pitt who graduated, got a respectable job, and stayed in Missouri was a version that would spend the rest of its days quietly wondering what would have happened if he'd had the nerve to find out. He had almost no industry connections. He had a car, a few $1,000s, and a direction: west. Los Angeles, the place where the stories he wanted to be part of were actually being made. He told his family he was going to a graphic design conference in California. By the time the truth came out, he was already on the road, and the decision was already made. Nothing about arriving in Los Angeles softened the reality of what he had done. The city has a particular way of greeting dreamers, not with cruelty exactly, but with complete indifference. It does not pause for your ambition. It does not adjust its pace to accommodate the fact that you just drove 2,000 miles and bet everything on a feeling. Los Angeles simply continues, enormous and sun-baked, and utterly unimpressed, while you figure out whether you can afford to stay. Brad found a small apartment. He had almost no money and no connections worth mentioning. There were no auditions waiting, no agent expecting his call, no door with his name written quietly on the other side of it. There was only the city, the rent coming due at the end of the month, and the distance between where he was and where he intended to be. The distance was significant. Acting in those early weeks and months produced nothing in financial terms. Auditions were scarce and rejections were plentiful. The entertainment industry is not a place that rushes to reward people for showing up with conviction. It rewards people for being the right person at the right moment, and that alignment between a person and their moment almost never happens quickly. In the meantime, bills arrive on exactly the same schedule they always do. Rent does not wait for your big break. Food does not negotiate. Brad needed money, not career money, survival money, the kind you find by doing whatever is available, whatever pays, whatever keeps you in the city long enough for something to shift. He drove limousines, he moved furniture, he took whatever came and stacked whatever he could. And at some point in the mid-1980s, he took a job at El Pollo Loco.
El Pollo Loco, the crazy chicken, was a fast food chain built around flame-grilled chicken, popular in Southern California. It was a chain with a mascot, a brand identity, and a very specific marketing strategy that involved hiring someone to stand outside the restaurant in a large foam chicken costume and attract attention from passing customers. The role required presence. It required the willingness to be looked at and laughed at and mostly ignored. It required standing in the California heat inside a bulky, sweaty, cartoonishly oversized bird suit and performing enthusiasm for people who had not asked for it. Brad Pitt was that someone. Take a moment to really sit with that image. The man who would later be paid tens of millions of dollars to stand in front of a camera, whose face would be projected on screens in every country on Earth, whose name would be spoken in the same sentence as the greatest actors of his generation. That man was wearing a giant yellow chicken costume on a public street in Los Angeles. He was waving at cars. He was handing flyers to people who walked past without making eye contact. He was standing in the sun, in the heat, inside a foam suit that was not designed with human comfort in mind, doing a job that the world around him was registering as somewhere between invisible and slightly absurd.
There is no glamour in this. There is no version of the chicken suit that you can frame in a way that softens its fundamental humility. The people driving past did not see a future movie star. They saw a mascot. They saw a promotional gimmick for a fast food restaurant. They saw something to glance at for a moment and then forget. And Brad Pitt saw all of this happening from the inside of it, with the full awareness of where he was and where he wanted to be, and the very large and uncertain gap between the two. The physical reality of it deserves attention too. Los Angeles in the summer is not kind to people standing outside in foam costumes. The heat builds early and holds late. The kind of physical discomfort that accumulates across hours in a suit like that, the sweat, the restricted vision, the weight of the costume on the shoulders, the stiffness of moving inside something designed to look a certain way rather than to be worn comfortably, is a particular kind of endurance. Not the romantic endurance of an artist suffering beautifully for their craft, just plain, ordinary, unglamorous endurance, staying in the suit because the rent was due. But the chicken suit was only half of his day. When the shift ended and the costume came off, something shifted in Brad Pitt too, because the evenings belonged to something else entirely. He was taking acting classes. He was studying, practicing, building the technical foundation of a craft he had arrived in Los Angeles with very little formal training in. He was going to auditions, the early, mostly fruitless auditions of someone who has no credits and no reputation and is simply trying to get into any room where someone might see them. He was meeting people, however peripherally, who existed at the edges of the industry he was trying to break into. The contrast between those two halves of his day was extreme. By day, invisible, costumed, anonymous. By night, striving, studying, trying to exist in a world that had not yet made any space for him. Living in the space between who he was and who he was working to become, with no guarantee that the distance would ever close. That space does things to a person. There were almost certainly nights when the question came, whether he wanted it to or not, what if this never works? He had left a university degree half finished. He had walked away from the path that had been laid out for him. He had arrived in one of the most competitive cities in the world with very little to show for the ambition that had brought him there. The people who had told him he was taking a risk were not wrong. The risk was very real. Every week that passed without a meaningful breakthrough was another week of evidence that the safer version of his life had perhaps been the wiser one. He was watching other people succeed. He was watching the city reward people who were not him, in roles that were not being offered to him, in a business that was under no obligation to ever offer him anything at all. Missouri was still there. The journalism degree was still, technically, close enough to finish. The ordinary life had not disappeared. It was just waiting, patiently, in case he decided to come back to it. He did not come back to it. Instead, slowly and without fanfare, small things began to happen. Minor television appearances, a commercial here, a small supporting part there. Nothing that would register as a breakthrough from the outside, but enough to begin reducing his dependence on the survival work. The limousine driving became less constant. The odds jobs became less necessary. The chicken suit receded into the past. The auditions were still difficult. The rejections were still plentiful. But something was building, accumulating across the months of work and endurance, forming a foundation that was not yet visible, but was becoming real. Then came Thelma and Louise. In 1991, the film was released, and in it there was a supporting role, J.D., a charming and magnetic drifter who passes through the lives of the film's central characters and leaves a mark that the story never quite recovers from. Brad Pitt played JD, and the moment audiences saw him in that role, something snapped into focus. This was not the ordinary quality of a capable actor doing competent work. This was presence. This was the particular and unmistakable quality of someone who could simply not be ignored when they were in front of a camera. The combination of ease and intensity and a physical grace that owed something, perhaps, to years of moving through the world with trained precision. Hollywood noticed, not slowly, not gradually, but with the sudden and decisive attention of an industry that recognizes what it has been looking for when it finally appears. The phone calls came, the offers followed, the trajectory bent sharply and permanently away from survival and towards something else. From a giant chicken costume on a sidewalk in the California heat to the sudden bright attention of an entire industry. That is the arc. That is the actual distance he traveled, measured not in miles, but in years of endurance and self-doubt, and the daily decision to keep going, when keeping going was not obviously the right thing to do. Most people know Brad Pitt, the superstar, the icon, the Oscar winner, the name that has defined Hollywood for more than 3 decades. Very few people know Brad Pitt, the dreamer, who waved at strangers inside a foam chicken suit, wondering whether he had made a terrible mistake, and choosing, day after day, to stay. The chicken suit is not the embarrassing part of the story. It is the most important part, because it is the proof that success, before it looks impressive, almost always looks ridiculous. That the distance between where you start and where you end up is crossed not in a single dramatic moment, but in hundreds of small, unglamorous, ordinary ones. And that the willingness to endure those moments, inside the heat, inside the suit, inside the uncertainty, is the thing that separates the people who make it from the people who almost did. This has been Fame Files.